Hey guys, how are things? So, back doing a knife today. It's not actually initially the knife I'd hoped to do today. We'll get to that one next time, but anyone that follows me, you know I'm a Lt Wright ambassador here in Ireland, and possibly my favourite knife of all time could be this one here, the Lt Wright Genesis, and what a fantastic knife that is. But that's not what today's video is about. We're looking at this knife that I received from Lt Wright. This is called the Sospes or Sospes. It's Latin. My understanding is the Latin translation is safe and sound, or without fear. This knife is designed by William Myers of Mantis Outdoors and made by Lt Wright. It's a substantial knife, and I just brought a couple of knives with me here today, just to show you that you know, everybody knows the SE5 and everybody knows the Lt Wright Genesis, okay, and those two knives, as you can see, have been given quite a bit of love. So this is the size of this, okay, so it's even a little bit bigger than the SE5. It's considerably bigger than the Genesis. It's thick, 3/16 of an inch thick, okay, so full tang. This is a chunky bit of steel, okay, and one that I really like. I'm gelling with this really quickly, and for the reasons that this is a knife that I promote to an awful lot of my students. As you know, you're getting into survival, what would be a good survival knife, and I suppose I'm forced to go into the difference of something that constantly happens, is explaining the difference between a survival knife and a bushcraft knife, and people automatically think of a Mora knife and Rambo. Okay, that's not the case at all. And what I like is I favour a survival knife in approximately the 5-inch blade. This is a little bit more than 5 inches, but I like something that has a fair bit of thickness to the spine, because it increases its ability to prise when you're batoning. Now in Ireland, and of course what you need in a survival knife can differ depending on climates. Now not probably the greatest survivalist that ever lived was Morris Kahansky, the late great Morris, and you know, you'd always see him donning a Mora knife. But in fairness, if you go through the teachings of Morris, a lot of his teachings are based around a 3/4 sized axe, and it's more wilderness living skills. But when he does broach the subject of survival knives, he always discusses that it should be a knife, a pry bar, that works wood really well. That was his terminology. Now this is definitely a pry bar, and it definitely works wood really well. I would say that a stick tang knife, and I do love Moras, and I love all stick tang knives, Puukos. I have a hell of a lot of Puukos, but if a knife can break, it's not strong enough, because this is such an important piece of equipment in not just your survival methodologies, but your survival psychology. Should this break, you're really going to be down in the dumps. So I like, this is a wilderness knife. This is the knife, that a type of knife that I would take with me if I was going into the wilderness, knowing that there's no chance of popping down to the corner shop to get another one. This is it, okay? So we're going to do a little bit of batoning with it, because what we find in Ireland, it's such a wet country. The subject of batoning, we always end up having to batten timber. We have a lot of pines in Ireland, and pines are very water absorbent, and as a result we have to get into an inner core. Now this is about as big as I would really consider that you need to batten. This slightly more than wrist thick, but I do like a slightly longer blade, just from the point of view of the comfort for batoning, that you're not bashing on the tip all the time, which is what can happen with a 4-inch blade. Now that's why I favour something around the 5-inch blade, 5.5 inches. I think this just falls pretty much into this. But the thickness of this 3/16 inch thick, makes such a great wedge. Like, I mean, it's wedging timber apart here because of the width of it, and that makes such a difference if you're going to be doing a lot of batoning. Now the chances are we could be in Ireland in a survival situation. If this is the only tool, we're going to be doing a considerable amount of battening. And I would always say that if your survival knife, your chosen survival knife, cannot make shelter and prepare adequate firecraft, what do you really have that knife for? And definitely my school of thought is I like overbuilt tools. Now when I say overbuilt tools, you look at these, this is battling fantastically there. This is really a great knife, and usually it takes a long period of time for me to use a knife to determine if it's a great knife. But I'm dealing with Lt Wright for so long, I understand the standards that they engineer knives and build knives to. And one thing that I love about Lt Wright, well, I love a lot of things about Lt Wright, but one thing I really love, and this knife is no exception, they build the knife from the handle out. And there are so many knives that are uncomfortable in the hand, but it's your hand is the driving force behind that knife. And if you're going to be using this knife for 2, 3, 4 hours on end, it needs to be comfortable. This is super comfortable. It's micarta, and I like micarta. It's an inert, you can batten on it, you don't have to worry about it. 01 tool steel, I'm still a fan of carbon steels, not just from the point of view that you can with a sharp rock or a hard rock over 7 on the Mohs scale, you can still create sparks from this steel. It's not the stone that creates the sparks, it's the steel, which you can't do with stainless. But I have this philosophy. If you look at high quality axes, they're all still carbon tool steel because it's very, very robust. And I will seriously look at stainless steel when they start making high-end impact tools out of stainless steel, and only then. My experience with stainless steel is it is quite brittle, even with the high-end stuff. So battening there, obviously no problem. So I'm just going to light up a few feathers that I made with this. I'll just grab them. So incidentally, when you make feathers and you're in the woods, you want stuff up off the ground. So if you have feathers here and you've prepared them, you want them up off the ground so you're going to use them. The same with if you've got a faggot of sticks, just put it up in a branch so that it's staying dry. So this feathers fantastically as well, of course. Now I do, when I get a Scandi knife, I do put a tiny micro bevel on it, and the reason for that is I do a lot of game prep. That's something that I do an awful lot of, and a full flat Scandi can be a little bit delicate for game prep, and I've found it to be at no disadvantage when it comes to making feathers and stuff like that. So I know I'm going to sound like a broken record because I repeat the same things over and over again, but it's just a force of habit that I have from teaching martial arts and coaching boxing. I repeat the same stuff, so it's almost neuro-linguistic programming. There are 2 ways that I use a ferro rod. I didn't invent these ways, okay? There are 2 methods that I learned. One, the first method I'm going to show you, I learned from how Ray Mears uses a ferrosterium rod. And basically what I'm doing, I'm planting my hand here. Let's assume that we're lighting some sort of flash tinder here. I'm planting my hand here and I am drawing the ferro rod in this direction back towards me, okay? And that is given a very, very strong directed stream of sparks. But the beauty of it is, let's say we're lighting this bit of moss, the beauty of it is it's directed straight at it, okay? And there's none of this. So one of the first things that I teach, and some guys and girls come to me and they've been doing bushcraft and survival for years, and they're doing this method, and we have to retrain them because we don't want our flash tinder strewn all over the place. Now the second method, which is Paul Kirtley's method, this is a fantastic method and works particularly well on a knife that doesn't have a 90-degree spine, because up towards the tip here you will always find a sharp point, even on a puko that doesn't have a 90-degree spine. And what we're doing with this one is we're generating sparks like that, pushing down really, really hard, and you can see how intensive that is because we're using force here just with the tip. and it's a very, very strong concentrated stream of hot sparks. Okay guys, just going to put this back in the sheet, and I'll grab a little bit of jute twine. You know, I favour jute. Always carry a bit of jute in your pocket, because I'll show you now. This is what 3 inches of jute twine created, just fluffed up. We can light these feathers here happily enough directly with a ferro rod, but the problem is it's probably not going to happen with the first strike. It mightn't happen with the second strike, and it could be 10 or 11 strikes. And I like to make my ferro rod to get as many strikes as I can out of this, and this is done by securing ignition on the first or second strike, rather than having to do 20 or 30 strikes, because you're diminishing the amount of use that you're going to get out of it. So, and there we go, and that will light up the feathers. Just fluff it out a bit. Yeah, there we go. So we have, and anyone that's done a course with me, I always have this on me. It's actually off me today for the purpose of the video, but this secures onto my belt and goes into my pocket. What I have here, I have some paracord. It's that Fire Strike paracord. I have my fire ferro rod. I have a lighter, and this lighter has a cable tie on it, so the gas can't be accidentally extinguished. There's no way of letting that gas out until I take that cable tie off it. I have about 4 or 5 feet of duct tape there, an emergency whistle, peelless, that's very important, and my little LED flashlight, and that's invaluable. Brilliant. When you're putting that back in your pocket, it doesn't go on the eye loop of your trousers tab, it goes on your belt, because that eye loop of your trousers can actually break if it gets caught in the woods. So just one other thing on this knife while we're talking about it. A knife, I would ordinarily have this on my hip. It's the JRE leather sheath that comes with them. A knife is either in your hand or in the sheath. You should be resheathing it. So a big problem we see with people lighting fires with ferro rods, they're rushing, they get a spark, they throw their knife on the ground, and next thing they're leaning over and their kneecap, the knife is embedded in their kneecap. The only time that this knife doesn't go back into its sheath is in the event that you're cleaning game, so that we have bacteria or something on this that we don't want to be encapsulating in this sheath. So that's the only time. So if we're cleaning fish, or if we're cleaning rabbit or whatever, we leave this out and wash it, and then we'll return it to the sheath. But other than that, your knife is in your hand being used or sheath, and that's a good practice to become accustomed to. Okay guys, we will be back with another knife video shortly. Thanks for dropping by, great to see you, we'll see you soon.